各位，华盛顿时间5月12号，美国总统特朗普在白宫签署行政令，大幅降低美国的医药价格。在同一场合，特朗普发表了讲话，涵盖的内容呢包括方方面面。那其中自然是少不了刚刚达成的中美贸易协定。特朗普呢，除了说这就是有利于中美两国的，也就是一份双赢的协议啊，但同时呢，他还提到了这个芬太尼的问题。那么我们注意到，在中美经贸联合声明里面呢，并没有提到芬太尼问题。实际上呢，就是中美同步下调关税到10%，另外还有24%呢是暂缓执行3个月。但这里面并没有包括最初特朗普在2月份对中国、墨西哥、加拿大征收的20%的关税。那么相信呢，中方对于20%芬太尼关税的这个反制措施呢，也同样是没有取消的。那这一次的中美贸易谈判啊，中方把它叫成是会谈啊，美国叫 negotiation 啊。那我觉得这个叫什么并不重要，最重要是看能够达成什么样的成果。此次会谈啊，中方的这个代表团中呢，还派出了中国公安部部长王小洪。那么相信王小洪呢，此行呢是去和美方探讨这个芬太尼的问题。那我预期啊，中国在未来会加强在芬太尼流入美国流入加拿大和墨西哥这方面呢，会有所动作。那么在未来，比方说3个月也好啊，半年也好，甚至更长时间啊，如果说从墨西哥和加拿大2个国家从美国的这2个邻国流入美国的芬太尼的数量，如果能够大幅下降的话呢，那么特朗普呢，自然而然他应该是会把这20%的这个关税拿掉的。另外还有一件很有意思的事情啊，就是特朗普呢，他还提到了在他第一个任期，中国原本要跟美国签订协议从美国购买价值500亿美元的农产品，结果到了签约的时候呢，500亿变成了150亿结果最后呢，这个协议呢也没签成。特朗普呢就说原来这是一场误会，是他把15 billion 听成了50 billion 把这个150亿听成了500亿。当然，如果他会中文的话，150亿跟500亿那也相差很远，那么也算是特朗普他自己承认了一个错误。然后就是在这个记者提问环节里面呢，记者还是有多名记者问到了跟中国相关的话题。好的，我们接下来就来看一下特朗普他原话是怎么说的吧。
In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue on the larger structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already on, that are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs because they don't want to pay 25, 50, or 100% tariffs, so they're moving them back to the United States. I spoke to Tim Cook this morning, and he's going to, I think, even up his numbers, $500 billion. He's going to be building a lot of plants in the United States for Apple, and we look forward to that. I really do look forward to that. But the talks in Geneva were very friendly. The relationship is very good. We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest. And they were very happy to be able to do something with us. And the relationship is very, very good. I'll speak to President Xi maybe at the end of the week. We have some other things we're doing. But one of the biggest things that we're doing, and I don't know if people realize this, but we made a great deal with China, a great trade deal. But it was a much bigger deal originally, and then they canceled it right in the last day. Some of you faces I remember were there when that happened. I remember you. And we had a deal where they opened up their country to trade with the United States. And they took that away at the last moment, and then I canceled the whole thing. And then 6 months later, we ended up doing a smaller deal, but it was a big deal. It was $50 billion worth of product that they were going to purchase from our farmers, et cetera. And we agreed to that. People thought it was 15 because they were doing 15. We made it 50 because I misunderstood the 15. I said, you got to get 50. Because when I asked, if you remember the story, when I asked, what are we doing with them? My Secretary of Agriculture at the time, Sonny Perdue, said, sir, it's about 15 billion and we're asking for 15. And I thought he said 50. So I said, so they came back with the deal at 15. And I said, no way, I want 50 because you said 50. They said, sir, we didn't say that. Anyway, bottom line, I said, go back and ask for 50. And they gave us 50. And they were honoring the deal. And we would call them up a lot for the corn and for the wheat and for everything. They were honoring the deal. And then when Biden got in, they no longer honored the deal. There was nobody to call. I would call on an average of once every 2 weeks to say, come on, you have to speed it up a little bit. And our farmers were doing great. I said to them, buy more land and bigger tractors, if you remember. That's what happened. But the deal was a very good deal. But the best part of the deal was that we opened up China. China agreed to open itself up to American business to go in. And it would have been a great thing, I think, for China. They would be able to see things that they haven't seen. They would be able to buy products that they have never been able to buy. Would have been great for American business. I think it would have brought unity between China, better unity between China and the United States. And the bottom line is that they canceled it the last day. We were all set to sign it, and then I went a little bit angry. I got a little angry. I said, they canceled the deal. The deal was done. It was all ready to be signed, and people went over. They came back to me, sir, they don't want to sign the opening up China. Well, the biggest thing that we're discussing is the opening up China, and they've agreed to do that, but it's going to take a while to paper it. You know, that's not the easiest thing to paper. But that's the single, I think, to me, some people would disagree. Some people would say we're getting a lot of money with tariffs or whatever. But, you know, especially when you add what we already have. Because remember, we're already getting the 50% on steel and different things. That's not included in these numbers. So you can add that. But the biggest thing to me is the opening up. I think it would be fantastic for our businesses if we could go in and compete with China. It would be a lot of jobs for China. It would be, I think, at a time when they can frankly use the jobs. And that's what we're talking about. So that's a very, very important element to add. So when Scott, I watched him speak the other day, and I think he didn't want to say it, but I said, it's okay to say it. Look, if we don't get it, we don't get it. But if we don't get it, it won't be a positive thing. But if we do get it, I think it's maybe the most important thing to happen. Because if you think about it, we opened up our country to China. They have very few restrictions. And they didn't open their country to us. Never made sense to me. It's not fair. And they've agreed to open China, fully open China. And I think it's going to be fantastic for China. I think it's going to be fantastic for us. And I think it's going to be great for unification and peace. China will also suspend and remove all of its non-monetary barriers. They've agreed to do that. Well, they're very numerous. But again, to me, the biggest thing that came out of that meeting is they've agreed. Now we have to get it papered, but they've agreed to open up China. It's going to be great for everybody. I'd like to go back to China just for a second. They're very heavy on the fentanyl. We're charging them, as you know, 20% for the fact that they send fentanyl into our country. And they've agreed that they're going to stop that. And, you know, they'll be rewarded by not having to pay, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. So the fentanyl should stop. It comes from China. It's amazing. And comes through our southern border, comes through our northern border too, comes through Canada, and comes through our southern border, much more through the southern border. But so that's a very important subject to me, because everybody in this room has lost friends or people that have family members that have died of fentanyl. So there's a big incentive for China to stop, and I take them at their word. They're going to work on that, I think, very hard. And one thing, when they work on something, they get it done.
If a longer-term not reach with China at the end of these 90 days, can the American people expect those tariffs to go back up to 145%?
No, but they would go up substantially higher.
Okay. And then
at 145, you're really decoupling because nobody's going to buy. But they can go, they got very high because of additional tariffs I applied during the course because of fentanyl and other things. But no, but they'd go substantially higher. Yeah.
And then on
Mr. President, are you open to negotiating your tariffs on cars, steel, and aluminum with China or any other country?
Well, we're not even talking about that. We're bringing the car business back into this country. We have commitments, and not only commitments, they've already started construction on many plants. They've left Mexico in a few cases. In a few cases, they've left Canada. They're not going to build in Canada. They're going to build here because we have the market, and the tariffs have been amazing. The election and the tariffs. November 5th was a big day, and on top of that, of course, you wouldn't have the tariffs without the election, I guess, if you look at it. But we have at least 11 committed massive car factories that are going to be built, that are in the process of being built. And some are going through, some have actually started. We also have renovations of existing factories where they weren't utilizing the full factory from years gone by, and now they're under full renovation. They'll be opening up full factories in a very short period of time. Our car industry is, I think we're going to have the #1 industry. If you look at Japan and these others, they do tremendously with cars, and they can do that too. If they want to sell cars in the United States, they're going to have to build factories in the United States, because I'm interested in cars for the United States. Now, one other thing is, in our tax bill, we're giving not only no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, but also we're going to get a deduction for people that borrow money to buy a car if it's made in America. If it's not, we have no interest.
Mr. President, thank you. Are you letting China off the hook for these 90 days, and do you really believe that they will follow through with non-tariff barriers and remove those?
Non-monetary tariffs, yeah. Yeah, I think they're going to follow through. I think they want it very badly. I think they want the deal very badly. Again, this doesn't include the steel tariffs that I put on a long time ago that Biden tried to get off, but he couldn't get them off because it was too much money. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China, what a lot of people don't know, but we put on the tariffs originally. And if I didn't do that, we wouldn't have a steel industry today. Now we have a thriving steel industry. It'll be thriving much more with what we're doing because this is the next level. But it doesn't include that, doesn't include cars, doesn't include pharmaceuticals when we do that. And the reason we're doing that will be to get them to come back in the country. There are, again, I always say it because a lot of people forget, but if a company like Eli Lilly, which is making a massive investment in the United States right now. They're building many, many plants. They've already started like 7 of them, many plants, but they are not going to be tariffed. There's no tariff cost. So they're all doing that. They're all coming back to the United States. I mean, I'll tell you what, I hope I get the benefit of watching this because, as president, because, it takes a little while to do this stuff. And we're doing it early in the administration. If you think of it, we have, I believe, if you look at the real total, it's over $10 trillion committed for plants and factories. Other administrations haven't had $1 trillion over a 4-year period, even over an 8-year period. We have over $10 trillion committed in one form or the other over 2 months. Give me a break. I'm here to hear 3, but let's give me a break on the first month. We want to get acclimated. But if you think about it, it's really 2 months. And so in 2 months, we have an investment already of over $10 trillion. And other presidents haven't had that done over a year, over 4 years in some cases. It's unprecedented. There's never been anything like it. It's a very exciting time in America. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.